Hi, I'm Laura.
Hey, I'm Stefan, and you're listening to Attributed, a podcast library by Dreamdata.
The purpose of it is to store and share all the knowledge that we have gathered across Dreamdata employees through our LinkedIn Lives, podcasts, and webinars.
The typical topics you'll find here can be stuff like marketing,
Sales,
B2B ads,
operations,
social selling maybe.
Hello, welcome everyone back to Attributed, a podcast by Dreamdata. I'm Andrea Coloma, product marketer here at Dreamdata. And today we're talking about a topic near and dear to my heart. What happens after the big launch? Because most product marketers spend all their energy getting to that big ship day and not nearly enough, or I believe at least not nearly enough, on what comes next. And that does include myself sometimes. Don't tell my boss. Anyway, to help us unpack this, I am super excited to be joined by Jason Oakley. He's a seasoned product marketer. Also, I'm a huge fan. Thank you so much for being here. And I thought for anyone tuning in today that maybe doesn't know you, tell us about what you do, what let you here today.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks, Andrea. Thanks for inviting me. This is a fun topic too. I love this topic, and I'm guilty of not following the advice as well. But yeah, I'm Jason. Today I run a business called Productive PMM, and I have an agency called Demo Dash as well that I run with my friend Eric. And my career, I've been a B2B SaaS my whole career. I've done sales, CS, and marketing, and most of my career was as a product marketer. So basically the last over a decade has been as a product marketer, and that whole time has been as what I refer to as a founding product marketer. So like the first product marketer in a company who's building the function from scratch. And so that's why when I started Productive PMM, I focused a lot on helping either startups who were just starting the product marketing function, maybe never had their founding PMM, or founding PMMs who are in the role and trying to figure it out. And so, yeah, that's what I do today. I create resources. I do coaching. I have a coaching program called The Foundry. And I love talking about building product marketing.
And you have tons of templates too.
Yep.
Jetpack, fantastic newsletter. This
You.
can just become a podcast about you.
I'll let you do it. I appreciate
in
that.
your work. No, but I guess before we dig into today's topic, personally, I still see a lot of companies, a lot of product marketers not differentiate between release and launch.
Yeah.
So why do you think that distinction matters?
They do. Yeah, I think that when you think of release versus launch, release is like it's typically like an engineering or a product term, right? So it's meant to, the thing is now live, it's ready, it's available in the product, there for people to use. The product and engineering side is like they're finished, they release it. Whereas a launch, the definition I like is a launch is meant to drive value for your business and for your customer. And so for the business, it's like you could have something new in your product, but unless it's helping drive revenue or it's making your customers more sticky, right? It's getting used, like that's not driving any value for your business. And for your customers, think of why did they buy your product in the first place? Is to get some output or outcome or benefit. And a launch should help them get more of that, right? So when you launch your product to them, if they're not using it, if they don't know that it exists, they can't get any value from it. And so that's why I think a lot of times, they are two different things. And a lot of times people think they need to happen at the same time, or that a release means it's launched, and it's not the case. Because I think that, Julie Grondin is a great product marketer. She presented once at a PMA conference. And she talked about this idea of product marketers launch information, not products. And it's the launch is this idea of launching information in a way. It's making sure people in your company are prepared and ready to like sell it, to market it, to support customers who now need to use it. And then that your customers now have the information of, okay, I know what this thing is. I know I should care about it. I know how to use it. And so I think they are two different things. And I think that product marketers, often the launch part is like a box to check, and it's just like an afterthought. And it needs to be thought of as different. I think so.
I could not agree more. But now that so like maybe let's try and define what does a launch look like today. I'm assuming also because you do coach a bunch of founding PMMs and solo PMMs, like what are you seeing that a typical launch looks like today in the B2B
Yeah.
space?
I would think like most launches are like a launch day, right? So, there's a day or a series of days, maybe a week where you've got your checklist, your bill of materials, and you're going through it, right? And so it's like blog post live, email out, LinkedIn post posted, published. And so that's what a launch typically looks like. I would say it is it is making sure that on the day of you're like announcing it. And not many launches, at least the ones I see, have clear metrics or like KPIs associated with them, past more like after the fact reporting on how much traction or maybe how much revenue came in from it. But like upfront when it launches, there's not a lot of metrics set or goals set for that launch. Um, and there's not a lot that happens after launch day. So it's like this like launch day or week, and there's a lot of boxes to check, but it's more so looked at as like, are those things checked? Is everything live and published? And then the launch is a success. That's how most launches I see.
So what like when a launch quote unquote goes well, that
Yeah,
usually means all of
all
the
boxes
we
are checked.
yeah. So
you know,
so we
yeah.
go ahead, go ahead.
No, I think yeah, it's like if the launch goes well, it's like did everything get done?
Yeah.
Did everything get done? And maybe it's like, is there a feeling like people are have interested in it on LinkedIn or whatever social media platform? Like, I don't know. You tell me. What do you is that like? Do you think differently? Do you see anything different?
No, I see, and, like, let's if I have to be really frank, like, you know, PMMs at least I don't believe PMMs should only, be doing launches, so I can definitely be I personally can find myself sometimes with so many things and, like, I'm just a girl,
Mhm.
um, so I can find myself doing a lot of things, and if it's maybe like a tier 3 launch, it's like, "You know what? We're just going to silently tick these boxes and
Sure. Yeah.
just move on because like, we have other things that are more impactful to do." But that being said, I do when I speak to, like, peers, I can see that this is sort of this hamster wheel that a lot of us get stuck in. I do try for, like, the big launches, I do try to, like, unstick, like, myself from that.
Yeah.
But I think it's a very easy pattern to fall back into, um,
Hmm.
personally. But I
Yeah.
do try. I think it just because it requires a lot of discipline, from, already starting with the work they have to do with product managers. One of the things that you mentioned, for example, were KPIs, right? Like, it has to start already there. If you don't know what metrics, you're trying to drive with this launch, writing a blog post, like, by the time that you're there, it's too late.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point, it also requires like internal buy-in. Like you could know, right, as the product marketer, or maybe the founding product marketer, right? Like the only one who's like, I own launches in this company. It's like you you might be like, hey, we need to be a lot of times it's that case. You're like shouting into the void of like, hey, there needs to be more than just like launch day, or um, like we can't spend the same amount of effort on every feature and all these things. But unless you have buy-in from your boss or your CEO, right? It's really hard to be like, hey everyone, we got to take a beat and like think about the goals of this launch.
100%, because you also can't set like, product marketers cannot be expected to set those goals by themselves, right? Like
Right. Yeah. It's a lot of times people are like, oh, how do I like set goals for a launch? It's like, okay, well, talk to your boss or talk to your, right. Like you need to, if you do it in a vacuum, then yeah, it's just kind of like your goals and no one else has bought into them. Whereas if your CMO, for example, is like, cool, like this launch is happening and we're expecting this amount of revenue or this like attachment rate on that feature, then it's like, all right, well, that's the purpose of this launch is to drive that, right? Whereas a lot of times it just ends up like the purpose of the launch is just to make it look like we're launching new stuff,
Mhm.
and we and so then there's no you don't know if the launch went well or not. You just know if
I
it's
think
done.
it's I think also for like, sorry, KPIs also, at least to me, inform the activities of a launch. So, for example,
Right.
like, you can have a product where you're not gonna expect a lot of product usage just because of, like, the inherent nature of the feature. Maybe it's like something that promotes, like, self-serve during onboarding. Like, your customers
Yeah.
are like, your users are not onboarding every day, right? So, like, you can't be like, "Okay, now I'm gonna judge it on, like, product usage," right? So,
Right.
but if you don't know that, then you just are creating the same materials you would for anything, and instead it's like, "Oh, maybe we need to take a step back and, like, work with, like, the onboarding team or, like, the account managers or the CSM
Right.
team," right? Do they have any onboarding goals? Like, do they have any numbers that they need to hit? Like, can we share a goal there? And then the materials that you create for that launch would look completely different, um,
Totally. Yeah.
right?
It's a great point. Like, especially when you're thinking too about you had mentioned a tier 3 launch, right? And normally something falls into that bucket if it's, a Me Too feature or something that is, yeah, not really differentiating, or maybe it's something that's not gonna drive more revenue for your business, but customers have been asking for it. It matters to them, right? Uh, and so for that reason, your goal wouldn't be a revenue goal, or it wouldn't be any goals related to awareness in the market or anything like that. It would just be how many customers know about this and how many are using it, like
Yeah,
attachment rate, right? Like,
yeah,
and and so then that would change, like you said, it would change the channels you use, it would change the content you create, it would, right? The people you
yeah,
need to enable, like you wouldn't need the same amount of effort necessarily as like a P1, for example.
yeah. But I wonder if I could maybe, because I love that we're giving so many examples. Before I get ahead of myself, so you obviously big proponent on thinking beyond launch day, but I wonder, was there a specific moment in your career that kind of, made you realize that the way to just, like, push for this big launch day wasn't sustainable?
No, it wasn't like I was in a company and we like did a launch and I was like, oh, like this big revelation. But it was, I think a while back, we, myself, Tamara, and Andy, Tamara Graminsky, Andy McCotter Bicknell, we started a course ready for launch. And so we were, I think now in the job that I have, where I get to coach people, I get to see a lot of launches as a consultant. I got to see a lot of launches, and you, with reps, you just start to realize that, yeah, you just start to realize that, like, hey, so much of this is just like launch day, and you see launch after launch. You're like, we spent so much effort, there was so much time on this one, and now it's over, and we don't know if it had an impact at all. And or you're like, we had revenue goals, but we didn't hit those. But oh well, we're just on to the next one, and we're going to do the exact same thing as we did before. And that's that. After you do that enough, slowly you start to realize, like, yeah, this is kind of broken. And you start to then realize too that the idea of tiering a launch is important because tier ones, tier twos are meant like the reason that not everything has the same amount of effort or the same amount of noise that you create around it, or the same amount of, like, even activities after a launch. The reason for that is that there's only so much attention that the market has. And if you're constantly just like shouting at them about new this, new that, when you do have something that you're like, this is actually supposed to move the needle on like revenue or supposed to make us really differentiated, they're like less attentive. Like you're not the message not going to get through as well as it could be, as well as it could if you really put all of your effort behind those ones. And so things like bundling, right, and combining multiple features into a launch that has more impact or makes a bigger difference is you start to realize, like, oh yeah, those things make sense, but it's really hard to do. It's really hard to do, especially when you're in a startup and everything is driven by like one or two people who are just constantly like go 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 go. Everything needs a launch. Everything's super important, right?
You need to enable
Very hard.
everyone.
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
So like one of the things that you said just a couple minutes ago was that okay, you have the product marketers that are like, this is not getting us any like this is not working. But one thing is you realizing it, and another thing is having that buy-in.
Yeah.
Are there other things that are keeping teams stuck in this like big launch day mode?
I would s I just think it's pressure. Like, as a product marketer, it's like you are, at the end of the day, you wanna do your job, you want to be perceived as doing your job well, right? And you want your boss and your CEO to be happy and feel like yeah, you want job security, like, you don't wanna lose your job. And so a lot of times you're doing what's asked of you, and a lot of times that is, "We got 3, 4 launches coming up this quarter, and I need to get them all done because that's what's expected of me. That's what I'm measured on." And so that just kinda leads to you're like, "All right, this one's done. Bye," and I'm moving on to the next one. Um, and so I think because of that cycle, product marketers just you can't blame them. Like they just don't have the time to be able to say, "Hey, we need to think about this. This needs to be thought of as bigger. This one's really important. We need to be doing more for the next quarter to promote this particular feature or product that we just launched in order to hit a revenue goal." And um, a lot of times, yeah, they just don't have the ability, and no one's asking them to do that.
Mhm.
So then why would they? Right? Because
Yeah.
they're just like, I got I got other things to do, so I don't need to waste my I'm not gonna waste my time on this.
I got
Uh,
enough things to do. Thank you very
yeah,
much.
I'm sure every product marketer watching this right now is like, yes.
Tell me they're like, "Okay, guys, move on to the part of telling me something I don't know."
Yeah, exactly.
But then what does good look like? Okay, so the answer is not just keep launching. So what are the PMMs that you coach or the ones that you work with or you yourself who are driving these like business results? What are you doing differently? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think that it's the so one is I think that you're probably doing less launches and you're doing more bundling of saying like, hey, we are going to do it's not me saying that you need to do like quarterly launches where you do like a quarterly launch, like a Salesforce or something like that. But you do look to do more bundling where it's like not every little release needs to be something that we're shouting about and do it and you just save them up a little bit. Like you save them up more and then every launch is more impactful. But I think that it's I think like give you an example for example, right? I find like Notion. I'm often sharing a lot of their stuff in my newsletter because I find that Notion does a really good job of after they launch something, they are constantly sharing. They are constantly talking about it. So you can see with a lot of their like new AI features now that they're launching after the fact, what feels like for weeks, there are multiple different like use case videos that they're dripping out there. Like they're just launching their custom agents feature now, and you're just seeing all of these different use case videos and templates, and there's something that's like bigger to this launch where it's yeah, sure, the feature is live, and I'm sure that there was beta people using it, and like launch day is just like one blip in this larger launch but you're continuously seeing then like, oh, there's an interesting way of how they're using that. Or, hey, there's like the head of product marketing at Notion who is showing me how Notion's team uses a custom agent to create stories for the agent launch that they just did. Right. So it's like this bigger thing that extends beyond just a launch day. I always think like a really good example is if you look at like an author and how they do a book launch, and like there's a day when their book launches. But a book launch is like it's like a year thing where they're doing like a launch tour and they're touring around and they're doing like everything just to promote this one book. And I think that it's not to say you have to take a whole year and have this like long drawn out launch plan, but a launch plan is more than just launch day. And there's like all these sequences of events that are associated with that launch. And it's not to say you have to kind of mirror that exactly, but if you take that idea, and even if you do it over like 3-month period of launching your product where you're like, okay, this is launch day, but we have these different, whether it's customer stories that we're going to share, right? Or we have these different use cases we're going to highlight over the next month or a couple of months or 3 months. Um, and you have longer term goals around it of like over the next 3 months and then the next 6 months, this is the revenue goals we need to hit. I think that though the companies that do it that way are much more successful with those launches. Um, and I think that the only way that that's possible if you really do tiering well, where you're like, we do a tier one and we can only handle a tier one like every 3 to 6 months, right? We only do like 2 or 3 of these a year. Um, and we don't waste a lot of marketing effort on like threes and fours. And we kind of save those up and bundle them in and that sort of thing. Um, yeah,
I I wonder. So I'm a bit conflicted, um, Jason.
cool.
I guess my first thing is, what is the, because I totally hear you, right? When you said a book launch, like authors, I also thought about like films, right? So there's the
Yeah,
big world premiere, but you can even see that has changed, right? You have world premieres, and you have like the London premiere, then you have the New York premiere, then you have the LA premiere. And then on top of that, you have like actors going into Hot Ones and doing this
right.
press tour
Yeah,
and that
yeah,
press
exactly.
tour and da da da, right? Because obviously it's great to have like box office like launch day, but it's even
Right,
greater, especially now, that people continuously go to the cinema
right.
to watch your
Yeah,
film, right? So that analogy sparked that in me, but then I wonder, like, should we be afraid of like fatigue? I'm just thinking like constantly. So you used Notion as an example. So, like, what now every week we're going to send like a new newsletter with a new use case about this product that we're launching. Like, should we be scared that do people even care? Are they going to open it if it's like the same as it was last week?
interesting. Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know.
I get your idea. Like, I think you know, the if you think that your like your audience, right? You have an email list. Maybe you have like X number of people you could hit on LinkedIn, and you have your different channels, and you could either fatigue them with something different every like a new feature every month, right? And hope that one feature hits. Or you could be like, this is a really important one, and we're gonna hit them the same amount of times, but with like less with the same thing. So within a 3 month period, we're gonna hit them with the same message this many times and hope that it hits, versus gonna hit them with 6 different messages about new features. They might only, like click into one of them, and it's the same amount of stuff, but at least you're yeah, you're like you're kind of focusing and like betting on like this is the most important thing, and this is what we need to make sure over the next 6 months we get in front of them. Um, but it is like I guess it's a trade-off where you're like, we are choosing that this is the most important launch that we have, and and because of that, we're not launching or putting market as much marketing effort into these 5 other things that we could. And so there is like a trade-off, and I do think there has to be like a trade-off, and so it's something to think about. The one thing I will say too is that it's not to say that because I think the other side of it too is that like product-led marketing, right, or like product focused campaigns of stuff that's not new is still really important. So it's
Oh, yes, let's talk about this.
yeah,
Absolutely.
so it's like if all you talked about was your new stuff, right? Every new thing you launch is like a bet, because best case, you're doing a lot of research, and there's a lot of like, yeah, buyer insight that's put into why you should build something new, and you build it because people want it and they're going to use it and buy it and that sort of thing. But not always the case. And so there are, things you build that are based on like gut instinct and assumption and what the founder wants and that sort of thing. And every one of those is a bet. And so the marketing effort you put into that is in the hopes that it's going to land with the market and that people are going to like it and buy it. Whereas you have stuff on the shelf that people love you for today and differentiates you, and people buy it, they use it, and we don't put enough effort into marketing those things. And so that adds a whole nother layer of complexity to the mix because companies should be marketing that stuff more.
Yeah.
And there are lots of companies who are out there who do a good job marketing their new stuff, but don't market the existing product at all.
Yeah.
And so unless a new thing, like one of your new bets, hits really well, then like it's hard to drum up demand and interest.
It's so funny because sometimes we have a I'm no longer a solo PMM.
Oh, nice.
Never thought I would say that. I'm just kidding. No, but I've been used to just being by myself. So we have a team now, which is nice. And it's so funny because when I told you that I was conflicted and hearing you talk, I was like, oh my God, because my team sometimes has those same fears. And I pretty much tell them a lot of things that you said. And I was like, oh my, I have to remember that like these fears are real, but sometimes, like you said, it is a trade-off. An example that I can think of, we do these customer breakfasts. Here in Dream Data, I would just like invite people to HQ, obviously those that can come. And we normally run them through everything that we've released slash launched in the last 6 months. Um, just do a little demo. I really like to use those for, like, messaging testing, like, is this still it
Cool.
was a very easy, like, live test, like, is this still landing? And then anything that's coming down the roadmap that we're allowed to share, in the next 6 months, and then again, I do some, like, early messaging testing, and we were having this discussion today, and one of, my junior PMM, she was like, "But does that even make sense? Like, these are customers that, like, already use us, like, they probably already know." And I could come up with 3 customers that I've spoken to in the last 3 weeks that in every single call with product, they are doing some discovery calls that I've been part of. They're like, "You know what would be great? If I could
Yeah,
grab all this data and put it in the CRM." And the product manager's like, "That's amazing because we can actually do that. We've been able to do that for the past 6 months." Um,
yeah. How many times in a webinar or like a demo to a customer, I was a CSM at another company, and it's like, yeah, how many times are you presenting something? They're like, whoa, when did you add that? It was like, oh, it's like 6 months ago, and that happens a lot. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, happens
so
so much.
that it does. I think, so it was really nice to hear that perspective because I was like, "Oh my god, yeah, those fears are real." But like you said, you are always going to send that weekly newsletter. You're always going to make that weekly LinkedIn post. So then the question becomes, do you want it to be about completely different things, or do you wanna exhaust all the possibilities to make sure that next time you jump into a call with a customer, whether it's you, whether it's your product
Right.
teams, or whether it's your CSMs, they're like, "Oh, no, 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 we know, we've been using that. Thanks."
Yeah. Yeah, you almost
Right.
yeah, it's funny, like, this isn't exactly the same thing, but it's like you, I've worked at companies where, the marketing team is, like, really afraid to send a lot of emails, but, like, sometimes there are some emails like, uh, things you subscribe to, and you are hammered with, like, an email every day, twice a day. I had a guy who messaged me like a couple of weeks ago, and I hadn't set up my emails correctly, and so he was like subscribed to like 2 email sequences, and he was getting over like a 10-day period. He got like an email like every day, maybe once or twice a day. And I was like, how has no one told me about this yet? And I think it's because you can, we worry a lot about like sending too many emails or like, hitting or like repeating the same thing too many times. And I think that we could do more of it. Like I think most B2B SaaS companies are on like the conservative side of being like, we can only send 1 email a week. Right. And I think that yeah, if you're doing a launch, I do think we could hit them with the message more often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So now let's say we know we've taken that step back. We're like, this is not working anymore. What are some of the sort of maybe practical tips to actually get that buy-in? Because as you said, like, and we say this about our customers all the time, right? Our customers just want like a pat on the back, like a little thumbs up from their boss and be like, good job today, you know?
Yeah.
And we want the same. So if we're not being measured, like if we're being measured by 4 launches per quarter, that is what we're gonna deliver. So
Right.
how do we bring in the rest of the organization to to see the light with us?
Yeah, it's hard. It's almost like convincing you need to do over time. So there was one product marketer I was coaching recently, actually, and yeah, they had like there was I think it was around launches he was trying to convince his boss of, and I think it was more around the idea of I think what he was trying to do was with their launches because they used to do quarterly launches like a lot packed into one, and they used to just do one big kind of like more like launch day. There's a launch event. Boom. We like hit you with like a million different things, and that's it. And he was hoping to um, lengthen it a little bit so that it was like their quarterly launch was like a multi-month or week kind of um, campaign. And he wanted to focus on different use cases and like some of those different capabilities each week. And I for him, it was a matter of like doing a test and being able to see like, hey, look what happened here, and using that as then like the thing he used to say during every week was like, oh, my boss is starting to realize, or like my founder is starting to realize that. And I think that what I was hearing is like, oh yeah, this is a thing that takes time. It's you can't come in and lay out a bunch of information and just kind of convince them by being like, I'm a product marketer and I know what the way it should be done and all that. You kind of do just need to be like, hey, for this launch, why don't we try this? Right? Here are my reasons why, but why don't we try it as a test and we'll see how this works? Like, so instead of launching these two separately, why don't we try bundling them with these two for this quarter and try bundling them into one? Here's like the story that we'll tell, or here's the narrative, and here's how they kind of blend together anyways, and here they have the same theme, so it makes sense. Why don't we try that and see how it goes? And or you take the same approach to multiple things, but I think it happens that way. Like I think it's like a gradual thing. Same thing happens when product marketers go into a company and they want like a better launch process.
Hmm.
They're like, today it just feels like product is just throwing new things over to us and we have like a couple days to respond and launch it. um, I always tell them it's like you can have all kinds of great templates and systems for it, but you can't come in and be like, here's the new launch process, and this is what we should do, because no one wants. They're like, who are you? What do you know? This process worked for us for so long, that sort of thing. So you need to do it in like little bit, yeah, and like earn their credit, like their earn credibility, and kind of bit by bit. So that's how I think. I think that's kind of how you do it.
Yeah. So it's what's it called? It's a marathon, not a sprint, right?
Totally.
Little,
Yeah.
small goals.
Exactly.
Um, so I really like what you said. You used the word campaign. Also talking about, maybe products that are not new but are differentiating. Um, or, you know, drive upsells, like whatever it is, that should also get some love and not just be stuck in a shelf somewhere. But when you talk about campaigns, I like the idea of thinking of launches in that perspective, because campaigns by nature are going to take a longer time, right? If someone says, I'm running a campaign, that
Right.
it's not like a one day run up
Yeah.
to, right? Um, I guess how long should these launch campaigns last? Like what happens
Yeah.
30, 60, 90 days after the launch
Yeah, it's
day?
a good question. Like, I don't know if it should be the rooted in the time frame so much as what's the goal, right? So if you are launching a new product and you have a revenue goal of like $1 million, right? So um, I guess you could say over the next 3 months we want to generate $1 million from this. Then it's like, okay, well, our campaign should be do a work back from that, and you kind of figure out how long and what's needed. So that's
Yeah.
why I think goals are the kind of a revenue goal or an attach rate goal or an adopt like download goal or whatever you have um, is important, because if you set that, then you can work back from it, and then you'll be like, okay, well, like even when I've launched products, like I've launched a jetpack, which was over a year ago, and I was like, oh, I think I launched it in September or October, and I was like, by Christmas, I want this much in revenue.
Yeah.
And so then I knew that, like, okay, well, here's the things I'm gonna be doing leading up to Christmas. So I don't I think that you could have some general ideas. You could be like a tier one for us when you're starting to lay out like your framework for how you're gonna do launch tiering. You could be like a tier one, we give it a P1, then it is going to be, we need this much lead time, and the launch campaign usually will go for 2 months afterwards or three
Yeah.
months, right? And that sort of thing. Whereas P3 is going to be like it's a week or two,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's what I
And
think.
that's
That's what I
why
think. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that's what I was about to say, and that's why you start with KPIs.
Yeah, you got to start with the goal.
Yeah, I think like, and it kind of touches upon what we were just talking about, how to get organizational buy-in. I mean, I will just to hype up Dream Data, like I'm in a very privileged position, I feel sometimes, that I work with people that get it, which is great for me. But I've definitely been in situations with leaders that don't. Um, and I think it goes back to, yeah, like how long do we focus on something, or what channels do we use, or what activities we prioritize? For me, it always goes back to KPIs, which overall for PMM, like we need to know the work that we're doing. Where do we bucket it under? Into what company goals do we have? If you I truly do believe in also co-owning KPIs, right? So like if I'm working with
Yeah,
the product team on one of their releases that will turn into a launch, like they normally have some like product usage OKRs, KPI, something that they need to hit
yeah,
that will naturally also become mine. Um so I think for me it always like bundles that to that one. I will say, I guess just like a tip that came into my head for those tuning in to get buy-in is also look backs. Like, you know, I know we're really busy, but like once in a while, just when you have a sit down with your manager, just be like, "Hey, listen, we did a lot of effort. Like this is how much effort we put in for this launch.
yeah,
What did we actually get out of it? Like these are the numbers I'm seeing. Like what are you seeing?" And I think when you talk to a manager in that perspective, right, of being like, "Oh, we spend a lot of money paying people to do
yeah.
all this work, and you're telling me that this is how much we got back." Uh, I think at least for me, that has been a perspective. Eh, yeah,
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think that's a great call. I think like one of the things too when you're doing a look back is um, one thing that I always found really frustrating is you would have a new, maybe with features it's a little different, but like say you have a new product, like a new product line, or maybe you've added a like an add-on product or something like that, right? And during you have your launch day, and it's like, okay, well, we're doing all these marketing activities, and we've enabled the sales team so that they know how to talk about this. But then you look back in a couple of months, and there's never like cold outbound about that. Right? There's never a rep who's reaching out to someone talking about that. They still are going to do their same kind of outbound approach. They're still going to use their same pitch deck. You look back and you're like, we did all this effort to enable our sales team around this, hoping this could be like a revenue incremental kind of revenue driver for us, but like no one ever talks about it.
yeah,
Um, and so, yeah, that's like the that could lead you to be like, oh, our strategy around sales enablement or the way we do go to market with the sales team around these types of products needs to change.
yeah,
And it needs to be more around like, we need the sales team to have goals for this add-on product, or
yeah,
we need to have something because
yeah,
that's what I find often gets missed in a lot of startups where they just have their revenue goal, they have their standard playbook that they run, and then you launch something that's new, that's maybe additional revenue potential. But yeah, there's
yeah.
you look
But
back and yeah,
and you know what? Like I completely co-sign everything that you've said. But you know what it is as well? Like just again, that sort of emotional layer that at least I believe any PMM should think about when they think about their customers. I think sometimes, especially if I look back at my younger years, I think you're scared, right? Because if you come to your boss and you're like, "Oh, we spent all of this like time, energy, budget to do all these like pitch decks and all these training sessions for the BDRs, blah blah blah." Now it's been 3 months. None of them have
Yeah.
used
Tell
anything.
me some.
It's
Yeah.
it's like telling your boss, like, "I'm a failure."
Mm.
And I think that's a real fear,
Yeah.
and I'm not gonna pretend that that's not a real fear or that you shouldn't have it, because 'cause I've definitely worked at places where it's like, yeah, that definitely backfired.
Totally.
Now it looks bad
Yeah.
on me. But I do believe that the startups that are going to make it, the places that, get it when you present it as like, "This is not a failure on my part, and this is also not a failure on the BDR's part. This is a process failure."
Yeah.
Um, so I understand that it can be scary, but at least for me, that has been a way of being like, "This is not working. So how do we?"
Yeah.
Because we are all on the same team. We all want this to work, right?
Right. Yeah. I totally agree. I think it's a really great point. Like it is a, you're anxious if you do a launch, you put a lot of effort into it, and then you go and you're like, well, we might have had a target, but if we did, we wouldn't have hit it because nothing you can see here. There's nothing. We checked all the boxes, but none of it's done us any good. Like there's
Yeah.
no results here. And a couple of you had said it basically where it's like it's a mindset thing where you are. I always find this is we did a survey a while back and we asked people a simple question of like because it was a survey targeted at people who were either like the only product marketer in their company. And we asked them, how do you think of your role as a solo product marketer or a founding product marketer? And some people would choose either or. And I think there's a difference between someone who thinks of themselves as like a founding product marketer, is that you think of yourself as someone who's like a leader who's building a function, not just executing on the tasks associated with it. So if you think of yourself as someone who's building the function of product marketing in your company, then you can look at it, or you'd like for them to look at it, especially as a founder. I'd like for them to look at it as, is this process working? Is our approach to launches working? And if it's not, like we should try to fix it. And so then I think that one like tactical thing, I guess, is if you are going to do that and you do a look back, which I think is an awesome idea, and you're like, we didn't get the results we wanted from any of these things. Um, have some ideas. So
Yeah.
if you're going to go
Yeah,
forward and
always
be
have
like,
ideas.
hey, everything here is broken. Um, don't just be like, it's broken. What do we do? Right?
Oopsie.
Yeah, you're like, this needs to be fixed. We want to go forward and be like, hey, this is broken. What if we tried this next time? What do you think about that? Right? Could we give that a try? Or here's what I'm seeing. I think that if we took this different approach, it would work better. And I think that a lot of times that part is missed. And so
Yeah.
then you're going in and you're being like, I don't know what to do. It's broken. Doesn't work.
That's a very good. I'm so happy you said that. Absolutely. A way to get buy-in is to actually bring something that people can buy into and not just
There
be
you go.
like,
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Have something for people to buy into. Yeah.
yeah, they we eh, yeah, no, absolutely. There's no segue to this, so I'm just gonna say it.
Next
AI.
question. Okay. Yeah.
I was like, maybe it'll come naturally. It's not, so I'm just gonna call it out. AI. So I think one of the obvious questions is that AI can help PMMs reclaim our time. They can help a lot of functions reclaim their time. Is there
Yeah.
anything you have seen in practice, that you'd like to share?
Yeah. I have mixed feelings on content creation. Like I think that a lot of time, yeah, like a lot of times getting AI to write your messaging for you or write your copy for you or like get it to write your landing page or blog post or whatever for you is it's a I don't know. I don't know if slippery slope is the right word or not, but I just don't think the quality is like that great. Like don't get me wrong, I get AI to help me write all the time. But I'm still going in and it's more of an editing partner. Like it's
Yeah,
more
of
of a
course.
I do a lot of like I dictate onto a page in Notion and then I help refine it or like reformat it, but it's like all of my ideas
Mhm.
put onto that page and then it's just helping with like tweaking or shortening or what have you. And so I think that that's if you use it in those ways, it can be really helpful with creating content. Then I see that. I think one of the interesting ways that it can be used by product marketers is more on, or not more, but additionally on like insights, like being able to take a pile of gong calls that you have that would normally take you a lot of time to review, and if you can bring those in and ask it questions and be able to get insights, like be able to look at like customer calls around a particular part of your product and be like, how do they describe the problem that it solves? Or what are like some sound bites that I can use? Like a lot of this stuff about their a product marketer's job that normally they don't have time to do, right? If you can, if now with AI, like they can actually do some of that stuff, then then yeah, I just think like it's going to lead to better messaging or lead to better content and just insights that they can share across the company about, you know, how they might want to position their product or all that. Those are things that are just skipped because they're seen as more. It's too time intensive to go and do interviews, right?
Mm.
So either outsource it or you know all of that. And it's not saying you don't do those interviews, right? But there are now with AI, there are products out there and there are tools, there are ways that you can take a large data set and
Yeah.
you can pull things quickly from it. So I love when I see product marketers doing that stuff for sure.
No, I echo. Like I would say about content creation. So first of all, and I will die on this hill. I mean, until I'm a very like die on this hill until someone proves me differently, and I'm like, oh, never mind.
Yeah.
So my mind can totally change. But for now, I will die on this hill. Like product marketers cannot be judged on their copywriting skills because we're not copywriters. That being said, you understanding something in your brain and not being able to communicate it, then you're no longer a product marketer.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and I think that is a great way of using AI. Sometimes just like get yourself in a room, record yourself,
Yep.
what you're trying to get across, and then, get like a summary, make a prompt that's like stick to my words as humanly as possible, you
Right.
know. But I do agree that if you're solely relying on, like, the actual content that you create on ChatGPT, Claude, whatever it is, the quality tends to be very, like, subpar. It always defaults to jargon words, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I've recently been using Claude,
Yeah.
to Claude Code, but also just Claude Chat to do precisely that. I'm very, like, analytical, like, I'm pretty sure in a past life I was an engineer. I wishful thinking, but it's been very great to, like, grab these, gong calls and be like, "Okay, point like, surface use cases, like, this is my definition of use cases, like, you know, look into, like, the first call of, like, the top 10 deals in the last 6 months, like, what use
Yeah.
cases are coming in if this is my use case definition." Um, I don't know, bring some quote bank, with direct links to the gong calls so I can, like, check them out more. I do have to say that has been I've been a bit iffy on the AI, but in the past 2 weeks, I've been doing that and I can totally see the value
Yeah.
of digging into customer insights in a way that I wasn't, able to before.
Yeah.
Um, but we are Oh, there's a little it's not a question, it's a little statement from Argelia, Tally. Also, AI is amazing to extract insights, not just from the customer-facing interactions, but from actual features, usage
Love that.
dashboards.
Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah. It's if you are able to get your hands on like product data and you can put it into Claude or ChatGPT or something and get it to kind of to tell you insight. And I don't have a ton of experience doing this, but I could totally see how yeah, even being able to be like which there might be features, for example, about your product that are really valuable that you never knew,
Yeah.
right? Or things that people constantly are using, and you're like, why don't we ever talk about these, right? That'd be
Or
like
you
one
can
of
find
the
gaps in how you track product usage, right? Like all of a sudden you want to extract something and you're like, we actually can't extract that. Why? And like have a conversation with your product teams of like, are we measuring this? How are we measuring this?
yeah,
I think it really does as a product marketer that is obsessed with customers, period. I think it really gives you I've been calling it superpowers for the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. And obviously I'm human. I've done vibe coding, right? Like I feel like it's I I don't like the word, but I love what it can do. But I think that some of the things that I'm seeing product marketers do, it's like when you think of buyer enablement and you think of like creating tools or resources for buyers to be that make it easier, for, whether it's like a ROI calculator or some type of like pricing calculator. Like I do think there are these things that used to take a lot of money and forever time to create, or you'd have to go and try to get some agency to build it. You can build those things pretty easily now. And I do think that you know, I remember at Clue, for example, we built a calculator for our competitive what was it? Your competitive enablement gap or your competitive revenue gap, right? So we had this concept that was part of our narrative, and we were helping people quantify like their problem. You're losing this much to deals you could win. And I remember I found there wasn't an AI tool for this, but I don't think vibe coding was where yeah even a possibility at this point. But I found a tool
Mhm.
called Calconic, which is like you can build a ROI calculator, and it was really easy. And that's what we used, right? So I was able to build that ROI calculator, and we were able to launch it. And it didn't take much time at all. But I think that that's now really cool. And I think if you're
Yeah.
in a startup, you want to build little tools like that. I think it's way easier now.
Yeah, I've definitely not dug myself into that yet, but I've also heard, like, I don't know, I think at the beginning, because the AI for PMM conversation was so focused on content, I was a bit like, rolling my eyes a little bit. I was one of those.
Yeah.
But I've been able to see people creating, like, a way to streamline, how they approach, like, launch tiering or launch activities, like with Lovable, for example, across product lines or whatever. Where I was like, okay, that's I didn't think about it like that. And I think, yeah, I've my mind has been changed in the past couple weeks.
Yeah. And it'll get I wish if someone could create AI that was like graphic design, right? Like if a product marketer could draft the messaging on a page and then feed that in and say, generate me a one pager, that would be,
Oh, it's over.
product marketers would use that. That would be extremely valuable, but no one can do it. Right. Like
No, yeah,
I've seen people try, but it's just not possible.
because right now, like, one pagers, it's not that product marketers don't see its value, it's just like, you are giving me another static collateral that is going to be outdated in 2 minutes, and
Yeah, it's like churning out the content. It's not that a product marketer is like, I want something to just completely write this for me, or maybe they do. But I think that the to be able to create a one pager or a deck, that it's a lot of it is you're just kind of like, take a deck for example. You're kind of like tweaked. Someone's like, make this pretty. That's what they want you to do. But if AI could just do that, right? And you're like, hey, here's the message. Here's the copy we want in here, and then it's like,
yeah.
boom, and it's pretty.
Ju
Yeah.
We're rounding up, but I have to say something just because you were like, "Make that pretty." I love it when it's like, "Okay, build a deck," and you're like, "Listen, I am not a designer. Like, I'll do it. I have the knowledge. I got it, but I'm not a designer." They're like, "No, no, 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 no. We don't care about design. We understand. We don't care. It doesn't have to look good. We'll send it to the designer later." Okay, and then you build something super ugly, and they're like, "Yeah, this is not really landing," and it's like, "Yeah, but it's because you don't like how it looks."
Right. Yeah. Yeah, the worst is when they're like, "We need a new deck. This deck isn't working." And then or like this, they say it in a way where you're thinking like, "Oh, like the message here in this deck," right? Like,
Exactly.
"Oh, we gotta like change the narrative," and you like start changing, and then you present it to them, and they're like, "No, like we liked what we were saying before." You're like, "You just wanted this to look different. You wanted it to
Exact
be pretty." Um, and
exactly,
so,
like,
yeah,
I can't help you with that, sorry.
yeah,
But it's true. I'm a big proponent of share early. I mean, again, my experience is working in startups. So it's like, I'm a big proponent of, like, share as early as possible, as fast as possible. But when it comes to one pagers And when it comes to decks, I do wait until
Oh yeah.
I can get something predified because that first impression is so important. And I have realized that stakeholders will never admit that they actually care about how something looks. So I just
That's
wait
yeah,
a
that's
second, then they can see it and it's pretty and be like, oh, and then they can actually focus on what it says and the flow. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. And then I'm like, okay, now we can proceed to
well, that's good. Yeah, I always found what worked for me was or not always found because it took a while to get to where like, oh yeah, I think this works, is just finding like one rep and one rep who's like more senior, but someone who's like opinionated, and they you sit down with them, at Clues, a guy called Pablo, and I sat down with him one time, and it's like we had to, update a few slides, and it was just him and I chatting back and forth. We got it to a spot where we were both happy with it. He tested it on a call, and he was like, came back. I think we made a couple tweaks to it, and then it was good. And then Pablo was like, "Yeah, we got the new slide. I used it on a call. It went great." And then everyone's like, "Great, let's use this slide." So I think that would be my approach. I'd recommend.
find your sales buddy. No, I think that's a great approach. But we are running out of time, and I want to make sure that people here become as big fans of you as I am. So thank you so much for joining us. Where can people follow you and keep up with you?
Yeah. So you follow me on LinkedIn. That's where I do most of my stuff, and share content and all that. And then my website's productivepmm.com, and you can subscribe to my newsletter there. It's called PMM Files.
And it's great. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you, Jason. You can find this and other podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. Bye.
Thanks, Andrea. Bye.
We hope you like listening to us. Subscribe to our podcast and the ones that we have been guests on.
And if you have any feedback for us, just do let us know. And should there be a guest that you think we should be talking to, then pitch us.
We're looking forward to seeing you.